Thanks for tuning in at Brackies. Hello everyone and welcome to video number 4 in Make a Game, a cool series on making a video game in Unity. So as always, I've opened up Unity, and what we're going to be doing today is we're gonna expand on our levels. So right now it's really boring. We only have one cube for our sphere to stand on and jump upon. So we're going to make multiple of those. We're also going to add a skybox, and we are also going to add textures to our object. So I'm going to talk about what materials are, what textures are, maybe even shaders and such. So basically all the visual stuff is coming along now. So beautiful. Let's get started. So open up our level 1 scene here. And let's first of all create a folder for our script so that our project won't get all filled up. So right click in our project pane, hit create and then folder. And let's name this scripts and drag our 2 scripts onto there. Cool. Now let's start out by importing a texture. So basically what a texture is an image that we wrap around our object. So let me just open up Photoshop here and show you what it is I mean. So we have our ball object here. Whoops, they're trying to draw a ball. It's not succeeding very well, but that's okay. So we have our sphere standing on our cube, and on each object in Unity we have a few different things attached. You know, we have a controller object, a rigid body that pushes our sphere around. So we have a rigid body, and we also have a controller script that allows us to move it. And all of these are again called components. But there are also some components that allow us to change the look of things. And one of these are called a material. So we go down here, and this is just shortened by mat. So we have a material. And on a material, basically this stores information on how we want our object to look. And it stores a few things. So basically it stores, first of all, it stores a texture. And a texture is an image. And it's what we are going to use to overlay our object. So we are going to wrap the image around the object, just like when you take a ball and a piece of paper and you fold it around the ball. That's what a texture does, and that allows us to add detail. The material also contains properties like shaders. And shaders are sometimes hard to understand for beginners. But basically what they do is they tell our material how it should be affected by light. So if we have a light emitting and it hits the material, we can say whether or not it should be reflective like a mirror, or whether or not it should go right through so that the material becomes transparent, or if it should be diffuse. And also it stores information about what kinds of textures you want to attach, because there are other than image textures. There are image textures, but there are also stuff like bump maps, which we will get into to make our game look even better, or normal maps as they are also called, normal maps. So it's really the game object is what stores everything. Under there we have a material which does all the visual stuff. Under there we have a texture, which is the image, and a shader which defines how light hits it. That's basically it. So now that we have the explanation out of the way, let's go ahead and actually apply this. So here we see the mesh renderer, and you can see it has a material called default diffuse. So if we go scroll down, this is the material. This is the default diffuse. That's the material. We are going to make a new one because we don't want to use the default one. So let's right click, hit create, and this is in our project pane, hit create, and then let's select material. And let's call this ball wooden. Ball wood, let's call it that. And up here we now have a bunch of settings, but before we go ahead and play around with this too much, let's first apply it to the ball. But let me just change the main color to something darker so we can see it being applied. So basically what we can do is we can simply drag the material onto the ball, and you can hold it over different objects and see it affecting them, but just drag it onto the ball. Or if this is not working, you can select the ball, go under the mesh renderer, materials, and then drag it in there. Like that. It's the same effect you'll get. So now we can see the material applied. And once again, we can select our ball and change settings here at the bottom. Or we can select the material and change settings there. It will do exactly the same. There won't be any difference. I like selecting it in the project pane because then you won't get this grid and axes and collider information and all that in the way. Cool, so what we want to do is we want to make the color all white again. You can also make it red and others, but we're going to be applying a texture, this one, so we won't be needing the color too much. You can see up here you have a property called shader, and here you have a lot of options. This won't make a lot of sense at the beginning. The ones you're going to be using the most are called diffuse and specular shaders. The difference is that a diffuse just reflects light just like wood does, whereas a specular shader has this little glow effect, this shininess, which would be more common in stuff like metal, in metal surfaces. So now we're going to select diffuse. And now we're going to add a texture, but first we need to import it into Unity. So close down Unity, and here I found two nice shaders of the cgtextures.com, a really nice website for finding free textures, as long as you don't claim it's yours. Then you can go ahead and use it also commercially, which means you can make money off of games you make with these textures. So it's a great website, but if you don't want to find them and such, you can just go to our website, brekkies.com, and then the slider here should say make a game. If not, you can go under projects and then select make a game, and here you can download the scripts and assets used that includes textures, so it will be in the pack. So that's awesome. You can go ahead and get it there. And also it supports me a lot whenever you do that, so it would be hugely recommended. Now let's finally import a texture. Wow, the rough wood, we are going to select that, drag it into Unity, just drag it in there onto the project pane and release. And now we have it imported. It was that easy. Just to make sure we have the settings set right, select it, hit texture, and then we are going to do these settings are just fine. Many of these textures are completely ready for games already, so you don't have to tweak anything. Also, by the way, Unity is soon releasing a 2D version, or it's going to be in the same program, but they're going to have 2D features. So if you are suddenly seeing that this is called sprites and not textures, it's because you have set your project to be a 2D project. So once you're creating it, you should select that it should be a 3D project, but you can't change all of it after. Don't worry, just hit Google and there will be an explanation on how to do that. So that's just for covering up questions in the future. Now let's continue again. So hit the ball. Oh yeah, hit apply to this. And never mind that error. Hit the ball. And now let's drag on the texture. Whoops. What happened there? Whoops, I dragged it under the scripts folder. That was not on purpose. Let's drag it onto the ball here, where it says non-texture. You can also hit here to select it. Yeah, so let's select that. And now we can see the texture applied to the ball beautifully. So this looks really good. What we can do now is we can play around with the tiling. So if we want it to be a little wider or a little smaller in some axes, we can use what is called tiling. So let's select the material in the project pane And let's try to make our x2, for example. That is a little better. That means it will make 2 copies along the x-axis. We can also try 3. That's a little too much. Please play around with this value. We can also take our y and maybe make it 0.5. And that might be good because we are looking at it from a distance. We can go ahead and view it in the game view. Maybe not. Go ahead and please play around with these values. We can try 0.2 and 1. That doesn't look too great either. Let's just go with the 2 and 1 there. Great. So now that we have that set up, let's go and hit our cube. And let's now, or our ground, and let's now import the texture for that. So let's head out here, hit the medieval bricks, drag it in just like the other one, and release, and make sure it's set to texture. And this again looks just fine. So what we can do now is we can make a texture for the ground. So right click, create material, or we can make a material, and then let's call this ground bricks. And now we can drag on our medieval bricks to that, and then drag on the material onto the cube, and you can see this looks all kinds of weird. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the tiling, and I'm gonna guess that the x-axis needs to be bumped up a lot. So let's try 5, and it already looks much better. Let's try 7 maybe. And yeah, that's not too bad. What we can do is we can select our cube, and we can see that our scale on the x is 10 and our scale on the y is 1. So what we can then do is we can go back onto the material and hit and make sure the ratio is 10 to 1, and now it will look better. But again, these bricks are really small, so instead we can make it 5 to a half, still keeping the same ratio. This actually looks pretty cool in game also. So please again play around with the values until you're satisfied, and you don't have to use these textures. You can find some of on your own, of course, so it's completely up to you. I'm just gonna try playing around with this tiling option again. Just can't seem to get it quite right. That is a little better, I think, and that was 1 and 0.5. So now that we have these textures set up, we can go ahead and expand a little bit on our level. Let's just also quickly add a skybox. So we're just gonna quickly go ahead and hit the right click in the project pane, hit create, and now I'm sorry, not create, but import package, and then we should see skyboxes there. And these are just some default skyboxes made by Unity, available if you don't have some made yourself. So these are really great. Just hit import to all of that, and it will just take a second for Unity to import it. And we should see a folder called standard assets, and under this we have skyboxes, and here we go, a whole lot of skyboxes. Now we can select our main camera. This is where we put on our skybox, and we want to add a new component. We want to add a skybox component, so click add component, go into rendering and hit skybox. And what we can do now is we can drag in one of these. Make sure you drag in a whole skybox and not one of the textures under the textures folder, but the whole one. So on the main camera, we can also select this one, and you can select different materials. You can also select the one we've made ourselves, so watch out for that. That's not something you want to do. I'm just going to try and drag in our Sunny 2. Let's try with that one. And you won't see it in the scene view, but as soon as we shift to the game view, we can see the beautiful skybox applied, and that actually doesn't look too bad. I'm just gonna try a few different ones. I like the Sunny 2, that was a great guess. And now when we play our game, it looks very, very much better. So this is a lot more exciting. We're also going to be expanding on lighting, making that look more cool, foreground, backgrounds, objects, a lot of stuff to play around with now that we have the scripting in place, or at least the beginning of it. And yeah, so let's just quickly throw around some objects in our scene, and then that must be the ending of this video, because we've been going on for quite a while. Great. So what we're gonna do now is we are going to make a prefab out of the ground. What a prefab is a genius thing Unity have made. It allows us to make our object into a shared object. It basically means that we can have a lot of ground objects all over our scene, and then we can change one of them, then hit apply, and it will affect all of the different objects. So that allows us to quickly make changes to various objects scattered around our scene. So now we can just go ahead and select our ground object and drag it down to the project pane and hit release. And now it has automatically created what is called a prefab. You can see that the ground object in the hierarchy has changed to blue. And now we can just go ahead and duplicate this or drag in the prefab from the project panes to make another one. And we can just drag it over and upwards, or change the position variables over here. And now we can start to shape our game by just simply duplicating by hitting Shift D, or Control D that is, and Command D if you're on a Mac, and then just rotating and scaling and adjusting these to however you want them. And now when we hit play, we have a level made which we can play and enjoy. And this needs some adjustment, so we can just go ahead and drag these two objects down a bit like that. And remember, whenever you're scaling and adjusting objects, it's a good idea to keep track of whether or not you're using the local or global position up here in the left hand side. This means that if we rotate our object, it can either orient itself through the new rotation, so we can drag it down this way, or we can make it global, so we can drag it straight down. So that's a great thing to switch between whenever you want to move these two down. For example, we probably want to do it using the global transform, so we can move them uniformly. Okay, so now let's play our game again and see if we can make this jump. We made it. And we can roll up this hill, and please play around with it, and we can also adjust the scale. This is where the game design comes in, and it becomes a lot of fun. You can also duplicate the lights. The possibilities are endless. So that's pretty much the ending of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.